Don't touch her. Muna tightened her arms around the newborn as Karim stopped beside the hospital bed without even looking at the baby. Rain hammered against the dark window behind him. His jaw looked locked so tightly she thought he might break his teeth. Karim, her voice came out weak after 14 hours of labor. What's wrong? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. His mother stepped into the room behind him, perfectly dressed despite it being nearly midnight. Her cold eyes dropped to the baby wrapped in the pink hospital blanket. Then she said quietly, "That child doesn't belong in this family." Muna blinked in confusion. What? Karim finally looked at the newborn. His expression changed instantly from shock to disgust. No, he backed away from the bed. No, this is sick. A nurse paused outside the half-open door. Muna stared at him, exhausted and disoriented. What are you talking about? He pointed at the baby with a shaking hand. Look at her eyes, look at her skin. You expect me to believe that's my daughter? The nurse stepped inside carefully. Sir, newborns can look very different after. Stay out of this, Karim snapped. Muna's heartbeat pounded painfully. Karim, please, you know I would never. Stop lying to me. He grabbed a duffel bag from the chair and threw it onto the hospital bed beside her legs. I packed your things already. The room went silent. When you leave this hospital, he said, don't come back to my house. Muna froze. Not my house. His mother folded her arms, watching her without sympathy. Karim, Muna whispered, I just gave birth. And now you can raise her somewhere else. He turned and walked out. Karim, she cried, trying to sit up despite the pain tearing through her body. But he never looked back. Her phone buzzed in her hand seconds later. Account access denied. Another notification appeared. Transfer failed. Then another. User blocked. By the time the nurse helped her outside hours later, the storm had gotten worse. Muna stood beneath the hospital awning, clutching the baby against her chest, while families passed her carrying balloons, flowers, and diaper bags. Couples laughed beside warm cars, while cold rain soaked through her thin sweater. She called everyone she knew. No answer. Again. Nothing. Finally, one person picked up. Muna, Sana sounded half asleep. Why are you crying? Muna looked down at the newborn trembling against her chest. I don't have anywhere to go. 40 minutes later, Sana pulled up beside the curb in an old silver hatchback. You're staying with me, she said immediately. Don't argue. Muna climbed into the passenger seat carefully, still aching from delivery. The baby stirred softly as a streetlight passed across her tiny face. For the first time since the hospital, Muna really looked at her daughter. Then she stopped breathing for a second. The baby's eyes weren't brown. They were pale grey. Exactly like Karim's father. Muna stared down at the newborn in silence before whispering, why does she have his father's eyes? 1 year later, Muna could frost 24 cupcakes in under 10 minutes while balancing Lena on her hip. Careful, Sana called from the kitchen doorway of the bakery. You're gonna train that baby to survive entirely on sugar. Lena giggled and slapped a tiny palm into the frosting bowl. For the first time in months, Muna laughed. It didn't last long. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket while she cleaned the counter after closing. Unknown number. She ignored it. A second later, voicemail notification. Something in her stomach tightened. Muna waited until Lena fell asleep that night before pressing play. Karim's voice filled the tiny apartment. Not angry. Not cold. Shaken. Muna, please call me back. I need to see the baby. She froze. For an entire year there had been nothing. No apology. No explanation. Only legal envelopes arriving every few months from his attorneys. She kept every unopened letter stuffed inside the bottom drawer beside Lena's clothes, because even seeing his name made her chest tighten. Sana noticed her expression immediately. What happened? Muna handed over the phone silently. After listening, Sana scoffed. Now he wants to be a father. Muna sat heavily on the edge of the couch. I'm not calling him back. You should have filed for child support months ago. He could bury me in court. Muna lowered her voice instinctively, even though Karim wasn't there. You know what his family's like. Sana crossed her arms, and you know what he did to you. Muna looked toward Lena sleeping in the playpen nearby. The baby's pale grey eyes had gotten even more noticeable as she grew older. Sometimes strangers commented on them in grocery stores. Every single time, Muna remembered an old conversation from early in her marriage. People used to whisper that Karim's father wasn't really related to his family because of some unusual genetic trait. At the time, Karim laughed it off. Now it wouldn't leave her mind. That night after Sana went to bed, Muna searched through old family photos online, wedding pictures, corporate events, anniversary posts. Then she found one image of Karim's grandfather. Grey eyes. The exact same shade as Lena's. Muna stared at the screen in disbelief. Karim knew, she whispered. Suddenly, violent knocking shook the apartment door. Bang, bangs, banged. Lena woke crying instantly. Muna, a man's voice shouted from outside. Her blood ran cold. She moved carefully toward the peephole and looked out. Karim stood in the hallway. And beside him was his father. Muna opened the door. Karim's voice echoed through the narrow apartment hallway, loud enough for neighboring doors to crack open. Sana rushed out of the bedroom tying her robe. What is he doing here? The knocking got harder. Muna, please. Lena began crying harder from the living room. Go get her, Muna whispered to Sana without taking her eyes off the peephole. Outside, Karim looked nothing like the man who had abandoned her at the hospital. His expensive suit hung wrinkled across his shoulders, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. But beside him his father looked worse, tense, pale, almost frightened. Muna, Karim said again, I just need to talk. You lost that right a year ago, she shouted through the door. A neighbor stepped into the hallway, then another. Sana scooped Lena into her arms just as Karim raised his voice. I know the baby is mine. Silence hit the hallway instantly. Muna unlocked the door halfway but blocked the entrance with her body. You don't get to come here after what you did. Karim looked past her desperately. Please, just let me see her once. No. Then Lena leaned over Sana's shoulder holding a stuffed rabbit. Karim saw her clearly for the first time. He stopped breathing. His father grabbed the wall beside him so suddenly, one of the neighbors gasped. Lena blinked up at them with wide grey eyes. That, Karim whispered, that's impossible. Muna felt anger rise instantly. Impossible, you threw your daughter into the street before you even looked at her. People in the hallway exchanged shocked looks. You abandoned her, one neighbor muttered. Karim ignored them. Muna, listen to me, I didn't know everything. His father suddenly turned toward him with visible disgust. Your mother knew exactly what this meant. Muna's chest tightened. What does that mean? She demanded. Karim rubbed a hand over his face shakily. Weeks ago I saw Lena outside a daycare near the bakery. I couldn't stop thinking about her, so I... You followed my child. I needed proof. Muna stared at him in horror. Karim swallowed hard. I took a spoon she used and ran a DNA test. The hallway exploded with reactions. You did what? That's insane. Someone down the hall lifted a phone and started recording. Karim looked directly at Muna. The results came back 3 days ago. She's mine. Muna's hands trembled with rage. You needed a secret DNA test to believe your own wife. I was lied to. And I was thrown out after giving birth. Lena started crying again from the shouting. Karim took a step forward. Muna, please, I made a mistake. She slammed the door in his face. The impact shook the apartment walls. For several seconds, the hallway stayed noisy outside, while Sana locked the deadbolt. Then Muna's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message appeared on the screen. You should have stayed gone. Kareem's mother. By morning, the hallway video was everywhere. Muna stood behind the bakery counter, staring at her phone, while customers whispered around her. "That's him, isn't it? The businessman from the video. Who throws out a woman with a newborn?" The clip had spread across local social media overnight. Kareem's face was unmistakable, so was Lena's. Sana walked over holding another phone. His company released a statement. Muna looked up. "They're calling it a private family misunderstanding." She let out a bitter laugh. "A misunderstanding?" Her own phone started ringing again. "Kareem." She declined it instantly. 2 seconds later, another call. Then another. Finally, a voicemail notification appeared. "Muna, please listen to me before my mother destroys both of us." That made her pause. 3 days later, Muna agreed to meet him inside a lawyer's office, but only with witnesses present. The second Kareem entered the conference room, she barely recognized him. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. He sat across from her carefully. "I should have listened to you," he said quietly. Muna folded her arms. "You should have looked at your daughter before throwing her away." Kareem lowered his eyes. "My mother told me you were cheating before the baby was even born. She showed me messages from another man, dates, photos." "They were fake," Muna said immediately. "I know that now." He rubbed his forehead shakily. "She manipulated everything, the timing of your pregnancy, the rumors. She kept saying the baby couldn't be mine." "And you believed her?" "I was angry." "You were cruel." Before Kareem could answer, the office door opened. His father walked in carrying a thick storage box filled with old albums and documents. "I should have stopped this a year ago," he said heavily. He spread photographs across the table. Men, women, children, all from Kareem's family. Several had the same pale grey eyes. One baby photo looked almost identical to Lena. "There's a recessive genetic trait in our bloodline," his father explained. "It affects pigmentation at birth. My grandfather had it, my sister had it. Kareem knew people questioned whether I was truly part of the family because of it." The room fell silent. Every memory hit Muna at once. Kareem refusing to hold Lena. His mother whispering to him before the accusation. The old family photos online. The comments Kareem once made years ago. Kareem covered his face with both hands. "Oh God. You destroyed your own family," his father said coldly. Then Muna's lawyer slid another folder onto the table. "There's something else." Everyone looked over. These records show large marital asset transfers made immediately after the separation. Kareem frowned. "What?" "Your mother moved money and property holdings to prevent Mrs. Kareem from claiming support." His father's expression darkened instantly. "That's fraud," the lawyer continued, "and if proven intentional, there could be criminal consequences." Kareem stared at the paperwork like he couldn't process it. Then slowly he looked toward Muna. His voice cracked for the first time. "Is there anything left to save?" Muna looked at Kareem for a long time before answering. Then she said quietly, "You want to know what the last year looked like for me?" Nobody in the room spoke. "I was bleeding and recovering from childbirth while sleeping on someone else's couch." Her voice stayed calm, which somehow made it hit harder. "I begged co-workers for extra shifts 2 weeks after giving birth because I couldn't afford diapers." Kareem stared down at the table. "I stood in pharmacy aisles calculating whether Lena needed formula more than I needed food." Muna swallowed. "Every time I saw families together, I had to pretend I wasn't wondering why my husband abandoned me before our daughter was even a day old." Kareem's father closed his eyes briefly. Muna leaned forward. "And the worst part," she said, "you never even gave me a chance to defend myself." Kareem opened his mouth but nothing came out. Because there was no defense left. His father slowly pushed the old photographs toward the center of the table. "My wife knew about the genetic trait," he admitted heavily. "She always hated that rumors followed our family because of it. When Lena was born, she saw an opportunity. Karim looked sick. She never accepted Muna, his father continued. Not her background, not the fact that she came from foster care. She believed Karim should marry someone from a wealthy family. Flashbacks suddenly connected in Muna's mind with painful clarity. Karim refusing to hold the baby. His mother pulling him into the hallway before the accusation. The comments about protecting the family name. The old rumors surrounding Karim's father. Even worse, Karim had known enough to question it. But instead of protecting his wife, he chose pride and humiliation over trust. Muna finally stood. "I'm filing for support," she said, "and for what your mother did with the assets." Karim nodded slowly without arguing. "You should." Within weeks, the scandal spread beyond local gossip pages. The hallway video resurfaced everywhere once reporters connected it to the DNA confirmation. Public sympathy turned sharply toward Muna after details emerged about her being thrown out immediately after childbirth. Investors started distancing themselves from Karim's family company. Board members demanded answers. Then came the fraud investigation tied to the hidden marital assets. Karim's mother lost control inside the company almost overnight. Relatives who once defended her turned against her after discovering she forged evidence and manipulated the separation. The family estate became the center of constant arguments until Karim finally moved out entirely. But none of it repaired what he destroyed. Months later, Muna stood inside a small but bright apartment watching Lena run across the living room with frosting on her face. "Slow down," Sana laughed from the kitchen. "You're gonna crash into the cake." The bakery had promoted Muna to management after seeing how hard she worked through everything. Combined with the legal settlement, she finally had stability that belonged to her. No fear. No dependence. No begging anyone to stay. At Lena's second birthday party, Karim arrived quietly carrying a small gift bag. No expensive suit this time. No arrogance either. He stayed near the back while Lena played with balloons beside Muna. For several minutes he simply watched them. And for the first time, Muna saw that he truly understood what his decision had cost him. When the party ended, he approached the doorway carefully. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just broken." Muna adjusted Lena against her hip. Karim looked at his daughter one last time before saying, "I don't expect another chance. I just needed you to know I was wrong." Muna nodded once. "Thank you for finally telling the truth," she said softly, "but trust doesn't survive abandonment." Karim lowered his head. Then he walked away alone. Muna closed the apartment door gently behind him and locked it. For a moment, she stood there silently, remembering the night she sat outside the hospital with nowhere to go and a newborn in her arms. Now she looked around her own home. Safe. Warm. Built by her. Lena reached up toward her sleepily, and Muna smiled before carrying her down the hallway. "The night he threw us out, he thought we would never survive without him. 1 year later, he learned we already had.